Developing news out of Quebec, the provincial government has tabled a new draft constitution. The new document is aimed at protecting Quebecers' core values. Premier François Legault says Quebec's language and culture are under constant threat in North America, where Francophones are a small minority. He adds, the government must ensure their survival for future generations. Quebec's Justice Minister says the document also recognizes equality as a collective right.
We will not accept anymore in Quebec that a person that will requires a public service and that will say for religious matters, I don't want to be served by a woman because she's a woman. That's the end of the game. We don't accept that in our Quebec society.
The bill comes as Legault's party, Coalition Avenir Québec, is lagging in the polls ahead of a provincial election scheduled for October 2026. And with me now is Errol Mendes, Constitution analyst. Thanks for being with us today, Errol.
You're very welcome.
Well, first of all, what do you make of this proposed bill?
Well, as was in the report, it looks as if there's a political angle to this because, as you know, the Parti Québécois, which is the separatist party, is ahead in the polls. And I think this is an attempt by the government to say, look, we will entrench the secularism bill and the French language provisions as a way of saying, look, that this is something which is equivalent to having this type of separate existence as a nation. Now, I think, however, behind it, and especially the focus on values, is really an attempt to say to the rest of Canada and for the federal government, who is actually having a legal draft before the Supreme Court of Canada, to say, look, there is no way in which you can tamper with the secularism law, for example, Bill 21, which dealt with the headgear, religious headgear in public spaces. So this is going to be very interesting to see how the rest of Canada and the federal government responds to this.
Some of the details in this proposed Quebec Constitution are 51 articles, and among them are rejecting symbols of the monarchy. It leaves one to question our currency has symbols of the monarchy right on that. So I don't know what would happen in that case. They would change the name of a lieutenant governor of Quebec to an officer of Quebec. What do you make of a couple of those suggestions within this bill, Errol?
Well, a couple of things which they said in the introduction to the law. They called it the law of all laws. There's an implication there that they're saying that it is above the Canadian Constitution. That can never be the case. So if there's any part of this Quebec Constitution which contravenes other aspects of the Canadian Constitution, that could be litigated in court. So as long as Quebec is a part of Canada, they can't basically call it the law of all laws without any reference whatsoever to any conflicts with the Canadian Constitution. So if there is one for all the areas you mentioned, yes, that could be litigated against whatever is in that bill.
Well, so given that it might face headwinds on legal fronts, what's the likelihood you think this may actually be passed?
Well, because obviously for political reasons they want this to be put in place right away, it may well pass. And they'll use it as a way of countering, the opposition, the separatist party, for basically political reasons. That being said, however, it is in the interest of Quebecers. Forget about the government, but it's really in the interest of Quebecers to understand what this is all about. That if it is indeed just an attempt to entrench in ways which are contrary to the Canadian Constitution, they should know about that. If also the government is saying, look, if we have this as part of our Constitution, no court, including the Supreme Court of Canada, can never question any aspect of the secularism bill or the French language. Keep in mind that there are certain aspects of the French language rights, for example, is also part of other parts of the Canadian Constitution. That, for example, the rights of English-speaking minorities in Quebec is protected by other parts of the Constitution, which is not subject to the notwithstanding clause, and that is going to be litigated in the courts. So I think Quebecers have a right to know what is the intention of this. Is it really an intention to say that Quebec suddenly will be able to have no absolute recourse to the Canadian Constitution? No, that should never be the case, and the government should be honest enough to tell Quebecers that this is their attempt to essentially politically entrench their existing secularism bill or French language rights, but it is not and can never be in contrary to the Canadian Constitution.
Errol, thank you for your time today. Errol Mendes is a constitution analyst.
Thank you very much.